Agenda item 8. So this is the social media monitoring report. Hopefully we've all read the paperwork and we've seen the report from the officer. Nancy, was there anything you wanted to add before we open up to questions?
Not specifically, no, Chair. Only to say I apologise that the co-author of the report was not able to be present today. Like other members, he has other commitments that he can't get out of. So we may not be able to answer all of your questions, for which I apologise, but we will get written responses to you as soon as possible. Thank you.
We're aware, obviously, adjourning this meeting or postponing this meeting, creating a new day has created a severe problem for lots of people. First off, then, let me look. Do any members have any questions they'd like to ask? Great, I've got Christine. If I can ask members to keep their questions to just 2 or 3, and if you can keep them short, and then if we can ask officers to also keep the answers short and to the point, that would be great, and we can get through business. Christine.
In reference to paragraph 15, right at the bottom, it says external communications team and the service area were familiar with both, meaning data 1 and data 2, by virtue of their social media posts relating to send. That was before either so there were these concerns before the parameters within which your fact-finding report is aimed at. Why is it that you didn't ask the question, how is the send team familiar and where do those concerns come from?
So I think we did ask officers, and I think it's in the report that there were tweets and communications that people were aware of on an ad hoc basis that's referred to in the report that didn't, in our opinion, amount to monitoring. But that's the basis on which there was a general awareness because of previous activity. And so basically what we've said in the report is it's not our remit to look at the veracity of those, just that they existed, which was the basis on which the 2 specific incidents that we were looking at, that was the background, if you like, to the basis on which the 2 incidents that we were looking at was based.
Okay, so as a follow-up to that, why was it those 2 particular times? How did you come to the conclusion that it was that particular point in the autumn and that particular point in the spring? How does that decision come around, that it was that time frame?
That is my understanding of where the concerns related to in relation to the collation of. That was that there were 2 incidents that we found where there had been collation of social media input from the 2 data subjects. And so those are the 2 issues that we were specifically looking at, because those are the ones that had been identified to us, and we didn't find any other evidence of any other collation, only what we were talking to, that more ad hoc knowledge from social media, our comms team monitoring the council's Facebook pages. Okay, moving on. So at various points throughout this report, it refers to both data subject 1 and data subject 2. At what point did data subject 1 become a formal member or have a formal role within the Parent Carer Forum? I think that that's in the report.
Yeah, it was January 2022. Yes. So my question is, why is it that a member of the public is involved previous to January 22 and being referenced previous to January 2022 in relation to their social media posts when they had nothing to do with the Parent Carer Forum?
I think it was basically it's the the evidence in relation to the activity, and it was, again, it's the background in terms of why there were concerns because of the previous activity that had taken place. We weren't there to look at the veracity of those, simply that's why officers had those concerns.
Christine, do you have one more question?
One more, sure. Okay, I just need to find the paragraph. Well, it's the paragraph related to the Sendias meeting. In answer to the public forum question, you said that you only spoke to officers. And so presumably you've used the word confidential in your fact-finding report because officers reported to you that it was confidential despite the fact that anyone that had access to the internet could access Eventbrite around the planet and therefore book a ticket. Is that correct? Did officers tell you that it was a confidential meeting? Because that's the word you've used in this fact-finding report.
My understanding of the meeting was that it was held, that the rules of the meeting were that it was information shared in the meeting was confidential. It wasn't a confidential meeting as in, I think people could be invited through Eventbrite to the meeting, but that the ground rules of the meeting were that it was a confidential discussion to enable full and frank exchange of views.
Can I just follow up? Okay, just to follow up then. So from a legal perspective, and is your legal advice therefore to your officers and us as members that therefore is a confidential meeting in the sense that we would understand confidential?
It's not about my legal advice, it's about looking at the facts. No, so I'm saying my answer to your question is that it's not about my legal advice, it's about looking at what happened and looking at the information we were given. It was reported to us that it was a confidential meeting. We've looked into that and whether it was a confidential meeting, and we've said that the information in the meeting was there, the ground rules were that it was confidential in a lot of ways, in the same way as a lot of meetings are, that the discussions within that remain confidential. And that the concerns were that understanding that tweets had been made.
Thank you. Tony, I see you've indicated you've got some questions.
Yes, thank you. Paragraph 49 near the end of the report, the last paragraph says that it refers to the Information Governance and Security Team. Could you explain what the Information Governance and Security Team is within Bristol City Council?
So this is a team that's been specifically set up to ensure that the council complies with all the relevant legislation and rules in relation to information governance, and it's divided into teams that look at freedom of information, data protection, and subject access.
Okay, thank you. And a follow-up question to that. In that paragraph, you say it was flagged to the Information Governance and Security Team, and as a result of that, they determined that there wouldn't have been a need for a DPIA. Was that the first time that that team had been made aware of what had been happening previously back in, as far back as autumn 2021?
As far as I'm aware, yes.
Right, so that corresponds with paragraph 31 where it says there's no formal decision to authorise the gathering of social media posts?
Yes, that's right.
Right. Okay, my next question refers to paragraph 35 to 39. I won't read out the entire paragraphs. But essentially it says that Officer C was asked to produce an options paper, and what I can gather from reading the paragraphs previously is that this expressed concerns, some long-running concerns about the forum not being properly representative, but also more recent concerns about the campaign activity. This may not be a question for you, Nancy, it may be a question for somebody else, but did that report include some examples of the social media posts that were causing concern as part of its evidence?
This is the options paper that you're referring to. So I have to say my colleague, Nick, would have been looking at that and he would have read that. I haven't looked at that myself, so I can get back to you on that.
Is there anybody else in the room that can answer that question?
I don't think so. No.
Okay,
No,
thank
sorry,
you.
Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Stone?
Oh, sorry, yeah, okay. I'd just like to just refer to paragraph, again, 49. I just want to know, it says here that there's, obviously you've decided that there's no evidence that systematic monitoring took place in that paragraph. And then you go on to say that that you've decided that there are some kind of campaign activities within those messaging, social media messaging. And the Bristol City Council have obviously raised this idea of campaign activities. What I want to know is, what do you mean by campaigning activities?
If I could come in and answer that one, thank you. So it is a very nuanced area, and if you have a look at some of the written responses to the questions that were submitted for today, you'll see that there is an answer to a question around that. I can't remember off the top of my head what question number it is, but it is a very nuanced area, and it is something that both Contact and the DFE haven't produced specific guidelines around, but there would be an expectation that the various different groups and forums would really think about these sorts of issues and how, for example, they might decide that there are certain areas around the SEND agenda where there might be a conflict of interests if they continue to work around co-production in those particular areas. So if I can direct you to the more written responses as part of the packs, they will have that breakdown in terms of some of those nuanced discussions around campaigning and co-production.
Thank you very much. I've got another...
Sorry, Councillor Stone, I think Hugh wanted to come in.
I was just going to say very briefly, it's in response to question 1 from the third lot of questions from Lucy White. Page 5 of the questions document.
Thank you. Councillor Stone.
I've got a second question. It's about paragraph 51. Paragraph 51 goes on to say that it says it's quite apparent that the amount of time in the question the time in question was negligible and justified on the basis that it enabled an informed decision. So what I'm trying to say is that would you consider that confirmation bias? Is that you're using something that's negligible, but you've used that to literally confirm the fact that you're going to withdraw this funding? Do you think that's fair?
I mean, I can comment on that very briefly. I think it's just as part of a whole lot of information, you know, a whole lot of knowledge that had been gathered around the time. I mean, I don't think necessarily that that point's being made to say that it's only a small amount of information. It's just being made to show that significant amounts of officer time weren't committed to looking at people's social media, because they weren't.
Councillor Stone, did you have one final question?
Well, the thing is that I think there's a possibility that there was some time spent on those social media posts, and then you used it to withdraw funding from an organisation that you are deciding are campaigning against the way that SEND has been utilised and used, is being organised and managed.
Well, okay, yes, Councillor Craig, you can respond.
Yeah, so I totally want to rebut that. That was not the reason. I think if it may not be totally in this report, but we have for quite some time been trying to work with the Parent Carer Forum over a period of time. This particular, the social media protocols was just one of maybe a whole series of other issues that we needed to contend with. And in spite of all the efforts and interjections by outside bodies and others, I made the view that it wasn't, despite all the efforts from all concerned, I didn't think we should continue with that relationship, and that it should be opened up for commissioning at some point. And that's why we also have the consortium of groups, so that we can make sure that we have a very inclusive and diverse voice of parents from the SEN world, in addition to what we have with Parent Carer Forum. So there is no one particular forum. We now have the consortium of groups, and over the next few months we will look to developing further the relationship that we have with those 22 organisations.
Can I just say that those issues were prior to the previous leadership?
Sorry,
I'm not.
the public can't speak at this point. Okay, thank you. Councillor Stone, I'm running tight on time. Did you have a very quick follow-up? Otherwise, I want to move on to Councillor Wilcox, and then I've got myself.
Well, my follow-up to that is, were you actually listening then to the Carer Forum, or actually hearing what they had to say, if you were obviously in consultation with them to try and overcome these obstacles? Because it sounds like you probably weren't.
So, indirectly, but I had feedback from the officers. I looked at all of the reports that we had in relation to what had been going on. So I may not have spoken to the Parent Carer Forum directly, but as a result of what had been ongoing for the last, I think it's like 2 years, I took a decision that we would no longer support the forum.
Thank you. Councillor Wilcox next.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to go back to paragraph 48 and the definition of what systematic and monitoring means. We've had examples of tweets from the Chopsy account being given in public forum, and they were over from the 17th of January to the 3rd of May. That's a period of over 5 months. And I do know for a fact that Chopsy tweets about other things than Send, because I follow her on Twitter. So there must have been some sort of systematic plan to look and filter her tweets for Send evidence. And that constitutes monitoring, in my opinion. Can we have a better definition here? Because I don't think this meets... You're saying that systematic monitoring did not take place, and I think it did, judging by the tweets that we've been presented with today.
Nancy, I think that's probably a legal question.
So I think what I would say is that from what we've been able to gather from officers and looking at the documents that we've seen, the tweets may have been over a period of time, but they were only accessed on a specific occasion. So that means that it wasn't systematic, if you see what I mean. That those tweets weren't being monitored throughout that time, but that we saw there were 2 occasions on which officers were requested to look at those accounts and to gather that information. So that's what that's why we said it wasn't systematic, because it was 2 specific occasions.
So, Councillor Wilcox, do you have another question or follow-up to that?
Yes, I do have a follow-up. So it was over a period of time. So that meets the monitoring specification of how you define monitoring, and you did actually feel that you need to look at these tweets. So it was a deliberate action, or a determined way, as you classify it here. I just
Sorry,
think
I
that
can only-
you're avoiding the statement about it being not systematic when it is actually systematic.
I don't think I'm voiding it with respect, Councillor Wilson. I just think we disagree. I'm saying we saw two specific occasions where, two distinct occasions where officers had been asked to look at or see if there was evidence of, and those specific occasions we did not characterise as systematic, which would be over a period of time. So we don't have to access those tweets on the day that they were made. It's just gathering the information at that specific point in time. So that's the conclusion that we came to.
Thank you. I've got a very long list now of people who want to ask questions. So what I'll do is I've got a couple myself, then I'll go back through. People who've previously asked questions, you're at the bottom of the list. You might get a small chance to come in with one very quick one at the end. So just, I have some very, I think, brief questions, which are probably quite easy to answer. Is my understanding your terms of reference then, when looking into the monitoring by BCC, was for these two specific individuals? You specifically did not investigate other social media monitoring, even of other members of the Bristol Parent Care Forum. Is that a correct assumption?
I'm just going back to the report. Yes, it was around that. It was the first occasion was, yes, it was in relation to those two individuals. Yes. Okay.
Thank you. The report seems to paint a belief or a picture of BPC officers not being trustworthy and campaigning in their roles as BPC officers. Seems to imply that they may have also leaked confidential information. Was there any credible evidence presented to you that endorsed any of these beliefs?
Sorry, Chair, can you repeat that?
So throughout the report, it's quite clear that there's a belief by some of the people you've interviewed that that people are campaigning, possibly in their role as Bristol Parent Care Forum officers, and also an untrustworthiness is also painted, that they may leak confidential information. I was just wondering if you actually saw any actual real evidence of this as a lawyer that you would be happy was solid evidence that backs up those beliefs.
As you were aware, Chair, we weren't asked to look at the veracity of the beliefs of officers in relation to the campaigning, and as we've said, in terms of campaigning, we didn't look into, as we say, didn't look into the veracity of that, simply into officers' beliefs. But looking at the report, we can say that whether or not the two individuals were campaigning as part of their role as members of the forum or not, and you'll have heard from my colleague here that that's a very nuanced area about, when it's within their personal capacity and in their capacity as members of the forum. There was certainly some evidence of campaigning that we could see that officers may well have believed that to be the case. In terms of untrustworthiness, we didn't look into the comments or the beliefs that may have existed about that. No.
Thank you. Finally, the dossier that was prepared for the Director of Education with her meeting then with Bristol Parent Care Forum, I've obviously seen some of the stuff within that dossier, and I guess I have to be slightly cautious on what I say about it, but I couldn't help but leave with the impression that it was riddled with errors. It was horrendously factually inaccurate in many, many places. It concerns me that this was then used as evidence. I was wondering, though, in looking at that dossier, and it's been mentioned in public forum as well, that there was one part of it was regarding 5 parents, and there was a reference to a zip file or something regarding emails, and that one of the data subjects had been acting as an advocate on behalf of those 5 parents, and they've been recruited via a Facebook group. Yet, as has been said, The Facebook group is a closed Facebook group. So actually, officers would not be allowed to be in that Facebook group. Would you say that if that Facebook group had actually, officers had entered that Facebook group to gather evidence, then that itself would be a breach of the REPA Act, as that is a closed Facebook group, with a clear notice that actually officers, in fact, I myself are not a member of that Facebook group because I interpret that notice to mean that I myself should not join it.
Chair, we'd have to look into that because we, in our questioning of officers, they were clear that they had not accessed any private groups or used their own personal accounts to do so. And that dossier that you refer to that was prepared at the request of the director obviously was what we were looking at in terms of information that had been collated prior to, we weren't party to the collation of that information, so no advice was given at that time. But we'd have to look into how that information was accessed and whether it was accessed indeed or simply referred to.
Thank you. Because the only other explanation is, of course, that it's a false statement, that actually what's claimed is not true, that was actually made up. Because either you would have had to have been in the group to know that that is the case, or in fact, what's been stated there is not actually a true fact. I mean, I'm not saying it's made up by you, but within the evidence of that document, I mean, it's not the only thing which is clearly inaccurate. There's a claim that one of the data subjects runs a very high-profile Twitter account, well known in this city. I would say virtually everybody in the council knows who runs that Twitter account, and this was assigned to one of the data subjects, which clearly is, I would have said, close to laughable.
So again, Chair, what I simply say that we need to, I'd need to go back and look at exactly what that was, how that had been collated.
Okay, thank you. I'm aware I'm hogging time and I need to give over to other people. I next had on my list Councillor Weston. If you can limit yourself just to one or two questions, that'd be great.
Thank you very much, Chair. And actually, I was about to go on the Facebook group. I have to say this whole discussion is reinforcing my delight that I'm not on Twitter. It's on this issue with Facebook group. Throughout the answers to Lucy, and the answers to Suzanne, and then you've got things like nuance and possible conflict. It's very open to interpretation. My own view is obviously it's been interpreted one way entirely, so it's not really open. But if we're talking about monitoring, and if we're talking about systematic and surveillance and everything else, and we're just saying that it's not happening, how can you say that and at the same time somehow someone has gone into a private Facebook group and got information from it? That takes a little bit of effort and a little bit of forethought, surely. So this is what's concerning me, is actually, maybe it's because I'm on Facebook more than Twitter, but how and why are they in there? That is not open to interpretation at all. They shouldn't be in there. And this is what's having me concerned, that that hasn't been properly investigated. That comes back to my moral compass point earlier.
Thanks. So, that might be more of a statement than a question, but did you want to reply?
So, sorry, Councillor Weston, what did you say?
This private Facebook group that seems to have access and information came from the dossier. It's alluded to in the public statement. I haven't actually read the dossier, so I have no information on this. But it's concerned me that somehow information from a private Facebook group, to which officers should not be members, it's actually quite clear in their stats, have information from within it. Now, if they've got information from within it, isn't that systematic monitoring?
I think there's a difference between systematic monitoring and surveillance, Councillor Weston. So if it's systematic is where it's being taken, sorry? So if it's over a period of time, that's systematic. If somebody has gone into a private account where that's not public accessible, that's more in the realms of surveillance, and we found no evidence of either. But as I've said to Councillor Kent, we'd have to look at the specifics that you're related, how that private information came to be in that dossier.
Did you have any other questions?
I really think that needs looking at.
Councillor Hants.
It's around this systemic thing. I mean, clearly, officers set out to gather evidence to support a particular point of view. And I don't understand how that's not systemic. Could you help, please?
So, I'm sorry, I can only repeat what I said to Councillor Wilcox, which is that systematic is over a period of time. This took place on two specific in relation to two specific requests. So that's the basis on which we concluded it wasn't systematic monitoring.
Thanks. Councillor Parsons.
Thank you, Chair. Just to continue on this vein about definitions of surveillance and monitoring, the report says that there were only 2 occasions on which social media content was collated, yet reading back through it, we see occasions on the 21st of September, we have an officer sending a tweet, on the 30th of September, a social media search, 7th of October, a brief search on social media, on 8th of October, a different officer is emailing social media materials, and so on. You know, it's a bit, some of the language is a bit ambiguous, but I count at least 6, maybe 8 separate occasions on which officers are viewing and sharing social media materials. And you've also mentioned previous ad hoc information taken from social media. So I was wondering how we resolve this apparent contradiction between the statement that there are only 2 occasions and then what seems like a pattern of repeated viewings of social media.
So I think in terms of ad hoc, that's where I'm talking about where there are, say, for example, the council has been, again, I'm not a Twitter user, so I'm not sure exactly how this works, but if the council has been linked into a comment, it will become, our comms team will become aware of it. Or if we're contacted about a particular issue, we will become aware of it. So that's what I mean in terms of ad hoc information being coming to the council. In terms, so that's not monitoring. That's just general awareness of information that's being sent to us. But in terms of repeated, again, I think we've taken the view that the times that officers were asked to collate information in relation to first of all the request from Contact stroke the forum itself, predating the involvement of the data subjects as members of the committee. So that was the first occasion, and then the second occasion, the request from the director in preparation for a meeting. Those were requests for that were in relation to a specific issue, and so that's what we're talking about. Those that wasn't systematic over a period of time. It was for a specific reason. So I don't think I can clarify any further, but I think if members would be assisted by further detail of how we characterise systematic monitoring, we can certainly do that. And also further detail about the law around that and the law around REPA as well.
Councillor Parsons, did you have one further question? I want to just warn members, we're going well beyond the time we'd allotted for questions, which just reduces down any time to debate or consider a motion. So, Councillor Parsons, any more questions?
Yeah, I wondered whether officers were aware of or familiar with Contact's co-production and campaigning guidance to parent-carer forums, which makes it clear that not only are parent-carer forums not prevented in themselves from supporting or raising awareness of local campaign activity, but also that there's nothing to prevent individual members of parent-carer forums from joining campaign groups, and in fact recommends inviting eligible members of campaign groups to join the parent-carer forum. There are obviously plenty of examples of active campaigners being involved in co-production. So I wonder really why the emphasis on on individuals being campaigners or engaging in campaign activity becomes the basis for this, well, we're not going to call it investigation, are we? The information gathering on their social media.
Well, Councillor Craig, if you specifically know the answer to that, which is the guidance, which I've also read, which I should say, Councillor Parsons is absolutely accurate in what he just says, because I've also read through that guidance, and it clearly does state, in fact, that Bristol Parent Care Reforms can be involved in campaigning, and clearly does state its members can. But does someone want to answer that particular question?
I can come in and answer.
Okay, it's fine. So, yeah, Vicky.
Is that working now? Yeah, thank you. So we have undertaken quite a detailed piece of work over the past 3 years to really try and move our work forward with all our parent carer groups. We do strongly believe, and I've said this many times, that by working together, there will be such strength in what we're able to achieve. And I think we've made some good steps towards really improving things so that we can work together. So, for example, over the past 3 years, we've been working closely with other parent carer groups as well. From other local authorities, we had colleagues step in and join us and work alongside us. And we've been working closely with Contact as well for advice and support. So officers are aware of the details, and we are aware that it is a tricky area, and we want to do some further work to enable us to move forwards and strengthen these pieces of work, because co-production absolutely runs through everything that we need to be doing across SEND, and we want to pitch that piece of work really right for our city. So yes, they do know.
Councillor Craig, I think you wanted to come in as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of make the point about campaigning activities. Of course, I have no issue about organisations campaigning. You know, I am from the voluntary and community sector. I've been campaigning for many years, but also being able to work quite openly and transparently with the local authority at times. And I think, I suppose one of the biggest, as I said before, over the last 2-3 years, we've been trying to repair the relationship with parents. And I think, given the social media use, the campaigners' use of social media to openly criticise and name individual SEND officers was also a camel that broke her back, I believe, because you put a lot of staff were kind of.
Thanks for that. Have you actually got any evidence of that claim? Because there's no evidence of that claim in the report that we've read. Okay, councillors, I have got a group of people who want to come back for more questions. I want to be clear, that will be at the cost of any debate or possibility to consider a motion. So can I ask that you wrap maybe your question into a statement that you might want to make? Sorry, wait there 1 second. Councillor Craig.
No, I just wanted to make this point, make this point. And I know you've kind of declared an interest, and I know you have a huge interest in this particular area. And as you said, there's quite a lot of other things on the agenda to address. So, I would love to see us get to a point where we make a decision about how you want to proceed on this, because that some of the questions, as we said before, we can't respond to. We need more time to respond to some of the questions that came through the public arena. But I just feel that we are spending an extraordinarily inordinate amount of time on this one particular subject, given that you said at the very beginning of this meeting that there was a lot to get through. So I'm not sure why you feel the need to continuously expand on the time this particular issue. We've addressed as many questions as possible, so I just want to know what point are we trying to get to at the end of this process.
Right, well, Councillor Craig, that's 2 minutes gone that we could have had for debate, which we've now lost to listen to that. To be very clear, we have a very clear agenda. We're sticking to that agenda. We're now at risk of going over, and that's why I'm trying to move the meeting on. This is an important subject. In fact, we've received over 100 statements from parents today on that, because one statement was signed by 90 parents. So for you to think this is not important, I'm a bit surprised. But we have many other important items, which I'm very keen we get to. So I'm going to continue to move the meeting on, whether people want me to or not. So as I was trying to say to councillors, I'm not going to take any more questions. We're going to move into the debate, and I think we should actually come to a conclusion. We have limited time. I have written down here in front of me a motion that I wrote this morning. But before tabling that, did anybody else actually have a motion or specific proposal, which I'd be happy to hear rather than my own? Councillor Weston, then Councillor Townsend.
Thank you very much, Chair. Firstly, I'll just reiterate from your chairing point of view, it's actually not up to the Cabinet member what we debate. It's not her meeting. Second point, I'm very concerned with the allegation that Bristol parent carers have been naming officers in Facebook. Well, you said the members were naming it. I would like to see evidence of that. So I will be submitting that, or can that please be recorded as an official question from me, that I would like to see evidence of that. But the motion that I particularly wanted is, we actually have the OSM motion on page 1 of this pack, as it were. I'm comfortable with that, but I would actually say their motion I think we can use a lot of, but I think it should actually involve the Chair and Vice Chair of this committee as well at the end. So that was sort of where I was coming from on that.
Okay, Councillor Townsend, did you have anything you want to come in on?
Yeah, I wanted to, there's something about apparent long-term governance concerns, and this council then continuing to provide discretionary funds for the financial year 21-22. And so what I'd like to understand is what it is that the council didn't see in 21-22 that they wanted to when they provided that discretionary funds, which was of course on top of the grant that comes from the DFE. The second area is around the Send People's Report from 2020 that's referenced. I don't know what month it was, but we are now in 2022. So my question is, when did officers start to try to diversify, which the statement from people at that time, the onus was on officers to diversify. When did that start? And therefore, are we now in a place where we have where we've got that grant from the DFE actually being decided at the local level? Because my understanding is that we haven't. We are 2 years on and we still haven't. We're not in a position where that grant is part of local decision making. It's still held by contact, and that for me is too long.
Okay, we've gone back to questions, but very briefly then, that was February 2020, that report. I guess a very quick question, when did officers start working on alternative arrangements? Does anybody know?
Can I come in there? Thank you. So officers have been working on the piece of work around parent carers since the first Ofsted inspection in 2019, because that was an area specifically that talked, so area 5, serious area of weakness 5, was all about the fractured relationship with parent carers. So that's where the piece of work started, was really kind of looking towards how we can ensure that co-production runs through all the pieces of work that we do. With regards to Contact holding the DFE fund, I just need to clarify that they haven't held it for 3 years. They're just currently holding it at this time. Previously, it was held by Bristol Parent Carer Forum. Oh, sorry, I thought I'd heard that it had been held by Contact for the past 3 years. Sorry if I misheard that.
No, my question is in relation to the additional discretionary funds that this council and the CQC provided parent carers for the financial year 21-22. What I'm interested, and I think this is maybe for the debate, what I'm interested to understand is what were the expectations that the parent carer forum were going to perform during that financial year in order to demonstrate whatever it was that you were funding them for?
Thank you. My understanding is, and I would have to go back and check, but my understanding that additional funding went to have a temporary chair from another local authority who came in to work alongside the Parent Carer Forum to work with them on developing the various different terms of references and processes and protocols. I will have to check that, but that is my understanding of what that additional funding went for.
That's my belief as well. So I want to move on now to a debate. Councillor Weston proposed a possible motion. I did review the OSNB resolution. The only thing I'm worried is that we've already moved on. In one sense, their recommendation was that it came to here. And so I think we do need to now move on. I've prepared a motion, which I prepared this morning. I didn't know if I would use it or not, because it would depend on the questions and the debate. I think what I'll do is I'll move my motion, because it gives us something to discuss. People can vote it down, get rid of it, whatever. Christine, if I can pass that to you, can you pass it around? And then I'm going to read it out to the room, and then I'm going to open it up to debate for people to debate. If it's not seconded, by the way, we won't be getting anywhere and we'll take something new. So let me just read this out to you. So People's Scrutiny Commission notes that there is to be a debate at full council. 1. We welcome some of the steps that have been taken to widen consultation, but feel this cannot be at the expense of high-level co-production with parents. 2. Believes that great damage has been done to the reputation of the council, its relationship with parents, and not helped improve services through its social media monitoring activities, and endorses the call for a robust new policy on social media within the council. 3. Notes the limited remit of the fact-finding report and calls on the Chief Executive and the Mayor to approve an external investigation into media monitoring of SEND parents within the Council, and for this to be carried out under the direction of the Overview and Scrutiny Management Board. I'll be more than happy to add the Vice Chair of this Commission into that as well. 4. It is very concerned at the lack of co-production with parents, so calls on the Chief Executive, and I put the Executive Director of Education, but I think it would be the Executive Director of People at this stage, to write to Contact and the Department of Education, indicating that they are now willing to sign the Memorandum of Understanding with the Bristol Parent Care Forum, and will reinstate the Bristol Parent Care Forum as the lead strategic parental co-production partner. 5. Call on BPCF and BCC to work together to now build trust and work in co-production to improve services for all SEND children and adults in our city. 6. Ask Democratic Services officers to send a copy of this motion and the report to the Ofsted Inspector. That's the motion I penned this morning with all of its typos and grammatical errors. Does anyone want to second that motion so we can actually move to a debate on it? Otherwise it will fall. Councillor Dyer, you're indicating.
Not to second it, but this is a People Scrutiny Commission vote, so presumably it'd be members of People Scrutiny and those subbing for members of People Scrutiny that'd be voting.
I think you're right. The only people actually will be able to vote would be People Scrutiny members, yeah, and the only people who could second that would be People Scrutiny members. So I guess I will just check. Does anyone wish to second that motion, or shall I open it up? Councillor Weston. Okay, so it's seconded, so it's on the table. So we actually have a moved motion which is seconded. So that's where the debate is around. What I'm happy to do is to limit the debate and move to a vote in case someone wants to bring something different forward. But does anyone want to speak to that motion? Councillor Hants.
Thank you for doing this, Tim. I appreciate you must have had a sleepless night or something similar. For me, is there something we could also include around not curtailing the opinions and views, or whistleblowing, in effect, of members of this group? Because I think there is an area of contention here around the nature of campaigning, a disquiet amongst many of us here about people within these groups not being able to voice their opinions. So this is a start, but is there something missing here about people not being silenced?
So you would like us to amend it and add a line along the lines of protecting the rights of campaigners and whistleblowers in this city?
Something along those lines, yes. I've fully formed it in my head, but I think you get my general drift.
As mover of the motion, I'll be more than happy to accept that line, so that can be embedded then as part of the motion. So a line that People's Scrutiny also believes we should protect the rights of, I think generally, of campaigners and whistleblowers within this city. Yeah? Okay, was there anyone else who wished to speak at this point? Councillor Townsend.
So I think it's about the reinstatement of the Bristol Parent Carer Forum. If we're calling for an external investigation that is cross-stakeholder, if we are before then, or at the same time as that, asking for the Parent Carer Forum to be reinstated, I would suggest that we're not being completely open and open-minded and transparent about what might be found by that external investigation. Because it may conclude that actually there was some activities that would mean the Parent Carer Forum wasn't the best or the most appropriate. That is a possibility. The remit, what we've got is so narrow, and if we're going to, what we want to do is open it up and have a much wider discussion with a lot more stakeholders to actually find some facts as opposed to what officers just say is the case, then closing it down and saying we're going to reinstate them as the Parent Carer Forum, I think is premature and possibly prejudicing and judging what we might find.
Councillor Weston.
I think Councillor Townsend makes a good point. However, I work on the principle you're innocent until proven guilty. I think this evidence pack has been collated in such a way that they have been removed as the partner. And what we're trying to do is put it back pending an investigation. So actually, that I see it as the reinstatement to see what comes out of that independent inquiry. So I take the slightly different view. I don't think we're putting the cart before the horse. We just simply put it in the horse where it should be.
Yeah, I mean, it's my understanding that at the moment there is no strategic co-production partner. But hold on, I'm going to just turn to the officers in case I'm wrong in that belief that there currently is no strategic co-production partner.
Thank you. This is the piece of work that Contact are going to be working with us on. So it's about how we work with our community of groups. So we've got 22 different parent carer groups who are coming together, and it's still in the early days of growing and developing that piece of work. But what we are working to do is to actually have conversations with that whole group so that we can make some of the decisions about how we think about the strategic co-production pieces and how we actually divide that piece of work up across the various different groups. So it's a piece of work that is in traction at this time.
Okay, thanks. So I think the answer to that was yes, there is no current strategic co-production partner. Councillors, was there anyone else who wanted to come in? I wanted to briefly reply. I see exactly what you're saying, Christine. The other thing I would say is that the external investigation is more into the acts of the council rather than Bristol Parent Carer Forum. It is about social media monitoring, not whether or not actually Bristol Parent Carer Forum or its officers did anything wrong. That's how I would see the investigation being about, because so far I think we have seen absolutely no evidence at all that Bristol Parent Carer Forum officers did anything wrong. In fact, all of the evidence points to the way they have behaved has been perfectly acceptable regarding Contact DFE, because all of their guidance says, in fact, what they have done is within the realms of Bristol Parent Carer Forum. I accept, though, some people may see that the investigation was going to look at wider issues. I saw it more as looking at whether or not there was any additional social media monitoring, because some has been brought up today, and whether or not that it was a breach of the law. I accept that our lawyers, their interpretation at the moment, based on the evidence they've seen, is that there has been no breach of the law. I would like to see that view from an independent person once they've also been able to look at the additional issues that we have raised today. That was probably where this motion was coming from. And for the time being, we think that I think there is a need for someone to be involved in that strategic level. So that's a high level where, and no offence to the Cabinet member, where in fact Cabinet members are rarely even involved in, which is often the sort of strategic partnership groups where throughout most councils in the country, a parent sits and is the voice for parents. And that, at the moment in this city, has been fulfilled by the chair of the Bristol Parent Carer Forum. And it's that bit I think should be restored. Councillor Dyer.
Just a very quick, myself and Councillor Wilcox are due at another meeting, so Councillor Wilcox is going to go and apologise for me, and I'm going to stay until the end of this.
Was there anybody else who wanted to speak? Councillor Parsons.
I have a proposal, thank you, Chair, around the social media monitoring, or at least viewing and accessing and sharing part of the discussion that we've had. The fact-finding report acknowledges that although the Council has a social media protocol, it doesn't deal directly with viewing and sharing third-party social media, and there's a recommendation that this protocol be reviewed. We're, I believe, also potentially going to be requesting an investigation into this activity. Now, it seems to me that in the absence of a protocol, if it's the case that the activity outlined in this report didn't rise to the level of unauthorised surveillance, that's kind of through dumb luck. We haven't got the processes in place to ensure that officers are viewing social media within their rights and their remit. So I'd like to propose that until such a protocol is in place and officers have received the relevant training, that they suspend any viewing and sharing of social media content from identifiable individuals.
I mean, that could be tricky, because there, of course, are people who directly tweet Bristol City Council saying, my bin's not been emptied. Can you please get my bin emptied? And then, in one sense, you've got to then share that information internally. Are you with me? There are perfectly legitimate service reasons why officers and the council uses social media. The question is whether or not we've stepped out of those bounds, I believe. Councillor Craig, I think you're indicating.
Yeah, it's in relation to the point that you're making about reinstating the forum as a strategic partner. As I said earlier, we have been trying to work with the Parent Care Forum over the last 3-4 years, and from my perspective, I still feel that there are some fundamental key issues that still remain. And I don't have that confidence. I'll just put that out there. I do not have the confidence at this moment in time that the Parent Care Forum are the right strategic partner at this moment in time. And that's why Contact have come in with the support of the DFE and the views that we had raised. And we are working through and with the consortium of groups. And they can and will be given a seat at the table. So until we get to a position after we've worked with Contact, I think it's very, from my perspective, it would be disingenuous to put that in when I, as a cabinet member, do not have that confidence.
Thank you. Well, the motion only asks you to consider it, so we can't force you to do anything. Anyway, we have a motion on the table. Councillor Stone.
I'd just like to come back on that. I mean, from what I can gather, what you had said here today, Councillor Craig, is that you hadn't directly communicated with the Bristol Parent Care Forum before you made the decision to withdraw the funding. So first of all, it's like nothing without us, about us. Nothing about us without us, I think, comes to mind. And then I hear that there's evidence being collated to fulfil your bias to remove the funding from the parent, and now you're saying that you don't feel that you are able to work in co-parenting with this organisation. I think we need to actually substantiate.
Do you want to come back on that briefly?
No, that's not the point that I am making. We had several, and maybe not me personally, but through our Director of Education, have been meeting regularly with the Parent Care Forum. So I took my advice from, and remember, before we even reached this decision, we'd already agreed that we were going to establish the consortium of groups so we could have a wider an inclusive and diverse group of parents around the SEN agenda. And over the months, so I took up post in October. It wasn't as if I think our first meeting was maybe December, January of this year with the consortium of groups. And during that time, our officers were still meeting strategically and one-to-one. And it was quite clear that the relationship was not working and was breaking down. So on the basis of evidence, information that had been shared with me, I'd seen the correspondence between our officers.
Absolutely. I can hear what you're saying, Councillor Craig. Yeah, you took the evidence from officers, but you didn't have. It wasn't a balanced view if you're not taking or looking or talking to the actual parent-carent form. Well, it isn't,
a balanced
is it?
view that, well, you heard that the organisation was in a bit of a disarray, and somehow you're expecting me to continue to work with the organisation that was still in a state of flux themselves.
Thank you. I think I want to...
or wasn't complicit with your views.
Hold it. Sorry, we are now going over time, and I am aware there are other important reports on. I just want to sort of say that I'm not aware that the organisation was in a difficult position. It had elected new officers and was moving forward as far as I was aware.
Move to vote?
Councillor Weston, yeah, move to a vote. That was exactly what I was going to do. I'm going to put the motion to a vote. If the motion falls, you can move a different motion. The motion is as amended by Councillor Hants. Is there anything you needed, Ian, from us? Before I go to the vote, I will give way to Nancy.
Thank you, Chair. I think it would be really helpful if it could be really clear in the motion, or perhaps as an addendum, rather than amending the motion now, exactly what the committee is going to ask the Mayor to investigate, so that the Mayor and the Chief Executive are clear about what that would be.
Thank you. I think the motion is relatively clear, but if you need the Chair and Vice Chair to clarify that, we'll be more than happy to do that with you afterwards, and we will copy in members of the Commission to make sure we've not misinterpreted what they want. But that's perfectly reasonable, because we have debated actually what do we mean. So that's a reasonable point. Otherwise, I'd like to get this actually voted on, because I'm aware we're now impacting on the rest of our agenda. So, those people who wish to support the motion as amended, please indicate with a raised hand. Obviously, it's just People's Scrutiny members or people who are representing People's Scrutiny members. Yeah, thank you. And those who wish to vote against, I think that was unanimous, actually. Great. Okay, so we've approved the motion. We will get back to you on making sure we've clarified exactly what we mean on that, and we will copy in other members so they're aware of that.